Rachel thought she was finally free from her past. But when hidden footage played on national television, her truth and her lies collided in front of millions. What Dr. Phill saw made him stop the interview cold. The lights were hot, almost too bright. Rachel sat on that stage, her palms pressed tight together, her breath shallow. The studio audience waited, silent and curious, the kind of silence that buzzes before something goes wrong. Across from her sat Emily, her older sister, her jaw clenched, her eyes sharp with the kind of anger that's been fermenting for years. Between them, a gulf of years, lies, and a truth neither one could fully remember. Rachel had come here for one reason: to prove she wasn't a liar, to clear her name. For months, the internet had torn her apart, labeling her a fraud, an actress, a professional victim. But now, sitting across from Emily under the eyes of millions, Rachel wasn't so sure she remembered the past as clearly as she claimed. Dr. Phill leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "Rachel," he began, "you say your sister is fabricating stories about your childhood. Emily says you're the one who made it all up. So, which one of you is telling the truth?" Rachel blinked hard. "I'm telling the truth," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. The camera zoomed in. You could feel every muscle in the room tense. Emily folded her arms. "You've been lying for years," she said. "You've been making our family look like monsters just to get sympathy online." Rachel's head dropped. "You weren't there," she murmured. "You don't know what it was like." That's what happened. Out of the corner of her eye, Rachel saw a producer rush to the edge of the stage, a small white envelope clutched tightly in his hand. He slipped it into Dr. Phil's palm mid-sentence, and for a moment, the host's face froze. His eyes scanned the note once, then again. The air shifted. "Hold on," Dr. Phill said softly. He turned to the crew. "Can we stop for a second?" Rachel's stomach flipped. The cameras were still rolling. The audience whispered, sensing something wasn't right. Dr. Phil's voice lowered. "Rachel," he said carefully, "there's something that's just come to light. I'm told we have footage we didn't have this morning." Rachel frowned. "Footage? Of what?" No one answered. A producer hurried backstage. The audience fell completely silent. Emily looked confused, then cautious, like she knew something Rachel didn't. Dr. Phill leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Rachel, I need to ask you something," he said. "Is there anything from your past, anything you haven't been honest about?" Rachel swallowed hard. "I've told everything," she said. "I swear." But even she didn't sound sure. The monitor behind them flickered to life, static buzzing before the image stabilized. It wasn't part of the show outline. It wasn't in the segment plan. Yet there was a grainy video, time-stamped years ago. Rachel's breath hitched. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. Dr. Phill glanced at the camera crew. "This footage was sent to our team this morning," he said. "We haven't verified everything, but Rachel, I think you need to see this." The first frame froze. A woman's face, older, weary, familiar in a way Rachel couldn't explain. And that's when Dr. Phill did something he rarely ever does. He stopped the interview. "Cut the cameras," he said quietly. "Now!" Gasps rippled through the audience. Emily turned pale. Rachel looked around, disoriented, desperate. "What's going on?" she whispered. Dr. Phill didn't answer right away. His voice softened, not as a host, but as someone who'd just seen a truth too heavy for live television. "Rachel," he said finally, "what we just found changes everything." The producers began whispering behind the scenes, trying to decide what to do. The studio lights dimmed slightly, and as Rachel sat frozen, gripping the edge of her chair, one thought ran through her mind. What could they possibly have found? The story she'd told the world, the story that made her famous, that made her hated, that defined her, might not even belong to her. And for the first time in her life, Rachel wasn't sure who she was defending anymore, her truth or her illusion. 3 weeks before that moment on Dr. Phil's stage, Rachel's world looked peaceful, at least from the outside. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds of her small Texas apartment as she prepared her son's lunchbox. Peanut butter sandwich, juice box, a sticky note with a smiley face. Online, thousands of people knew her as Rachel the survivor, a brave mother who had escaped a childhood of abuse and turned her pain into purpose. But when the camera was off, things weren't as perfect. She would stare at her reflection and ask herself the same question every morning. Why don't I remember all of it? Her stories had inspired thousands, but deep down, something didn't fit. Faces blurred, timelines tangled. Some nights, she'd wake up drenched in sweat, certain she dreamed something that wasn't hers. Still, she pushed those doubts down. Because people needed her story. It paid the bills. It gave her meaning. Until one night, everything changed. Rachel was scrolling through her phone when she saw it. A video uploaded by a woman with familiar eyes and a shaky voice. The title read, "My sister's lying about everything." It was Emily, her estranged sister. The sister she hadn't spoken to in almost 8 years. Emily sat in her kitchen, trembling, tears streaking her face. "I can't keep quiet anymore," she said into the camera. "Rachel's stories aren't true. None of them. She's been lying about our family for attention. She's ruining our parents' lives." Rachel froze. Her heart thudded in her ears. She played the video again. Every sentence hit like a slap. Emily brought out photo albums, hospital records, even letters, all claiming Rachel's childhood hadn't been the nightmare she described. The video went viral overnight. Within hours, Rachel's followers turned on her. Comments poured in. "You're fake. You made this up. You're disgusting." Sponsors pulled out. Her inbox filled with hate. Her world, the one built on truth, or what she thought was truth, began to collapse. The next morning, a producer from the Dr. Phill show called. "We'd like to help you tell your side of the story," she said gently. "Would you be open to coming on the show with Emily?" Rachel hesitated. "Only if I can prove she's lying." But after she hung up, her confidence cracked. How do you prove a memory? How do you defend something you only feel happened? Meanwhile, Emily was already talking to reporters. Rachel was always dramatic, she told one outlet. But when she started saying Mom and Dad hurt her, that's when I knew she'd lost touch with reality. For days, Rachel avoided her phone. But the internet doesn't wait. Her name trended on Twitter. Strangers dissected her life in comment threads and live streams. Finally, she opened her laptop and hit record. Her face was pale, her eyes red. "People can say what they want," she said to the camera. "But I know what happened. I lived it. It got 1 million views in 24 hours. And then, something unexpected. Dr. Phil's producers called again, this time with urgency. "We've done a background check," one said. "There are inconsistencies. Court records, adoption files. Something doesn't line up." Rachel's hand shook as she asked, "What do you mean?" "We'll explain when you arrive." 3 days later, she sat in a black SUV outside Paramount Studios, staring at her reflection in the tinted window. She told herself this was her chance to prove she wasn't crazy. But another voice whispered, "What if Emily's right? What have you been wrong this whole time?" When the driver said, "We're here," Rachel smiled weakly. The set felt bigger than she imagined, colder too. She could already feel judgment in the air, from the crew, the cameras, the audience she hadn't yet seen. But she straightened her shoulders and whispered to herself, "Tell the truth. Just tell the truth." She didn't know that somewhere backstage, producers had already uncovered something she'd never been told. Something that would make every story she'd ever told crumble like sand. Because sometimes, when you chase truth hard enough, it starts chasing you back. Backstage at the Dr. Phill studio, the air felt heavy like the moment before a thunderstorm. Rachel sat alone in the green room, tapping her nails against a cup of lukewarm coffee. The hum of distant cameras echoed through the walls. Outside her door, producers whispered, too softly for her to make out, but just loud enough for her to know they were talking about her. One of them, a woman named Jenna, walked in with a clipboard. Her smile was polite but tight. "Hey, Rachel, before we start, we just need to go over a few things for the show, okay?" Rachel nodded, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Sure." Jenna hesitated. "You said in your interviews that you and Emily were raised by your biological parents, right?" Rachel frowned. "Of course. Why?" Jenna's eyes darted to the papers on her clipboard. "Just confirming." She forced a smile. "Thanks." And then she left, too quickly. Rachel's chest tightened. Something was off. The air felt colder now. Meanwhile, in another room, Dr. Phil's research team sat around a long table littered with files, photos, and manila envelopes stamped confidential. They had dug deeper than usual into sealed records, old court cases, and something they'd obtained just 48 hours before, a DNA report. The results didn't match. According to the file, Rachel and Emily shared the same father, but not the same mother. And the woman listed as Rachel's biological mother wasn't the one she grew up calling mom. In fact, that woman, her real mother, had disappeared when Rachel was barely 2 years old. Dr. Phill skimmed the paper slowly, his face unreadable. He'd seen many shocking family secrets before, but this one was different. There were adoption papers hidden under a different name, a hospital record from a different state, and a photograph, a faded picture of a baby girl with the same green eyes Rachel had. The file was labeled Baby June. He looked up at his team. "This isn't just about lies," he said quietly. "This is about identity." Back in the dressing room, Rachel's nerves were unraveling. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Don't believe everything they tell you." She froze. Emily? No, it couldn't be. Emily wouldn't warn her. She wanted her exposed. But who else could he be? Minutes later, a producer entered with 2 security guards and a small locked case. They didn't explain why. They didn't have to. Rachel watched as the case was handed directly to Dr. Phil's assistant on stage. When the red light on the camera turned on, Rachel tried to steady her breathing. She wanted to defend herself, to reclaim her truth, but something deep inside told her this wasn't going to be that kind of interview. Halfway through the taping, Dr. Phil's tone shifted. He placed his note cards aside. "Rachel," he said gently, "sometimes we uncover things that surprise even us." He motioned to the producer, who placed the sealed folder in front of him. "I need you to stay calm, all right?" The audience leaned in. Rachel nodded slowly. Dr. Phill opened the folder. Inside was a DNA report with 2 names, Rachel Morgan and Emily Morgan. The words at the bottom read, half-siblings. Probability of full relation, 0.0. Rachel's eyes scanned the paper, but her brain couldn't process it. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Phill exhaled. "It means you and Emily don't share the same mother." The room went silent. Emily's face fell. The audience murmured. Rachel shook her head. "That's impossible." "That's not. There's more," Dr. Phill said softly. He pulled another document from the folder, a faded adoption certificate from 1994. "According to this, you were placed under guardianship when you were 2 years old. The woman you grew up calling mom, she wasn't listed as your biological parent." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered. "No, that can't be right." Emily's voice cracked from across the stage. "Rachel, I didn't know either. I swear." But Rachel wasn't listening. Her mind flashed to fragments, a different crib, a lullaby in another voice, the smell of cigarettes and perfume. Memories she'd buried years ago began clawing their way back. Dr. Phill placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "There's something else we need to show you," he said. "We found someone who claims to be your biological mother. She's agreed to speak to us on camera." Rachel looked up, her face pale as chalk. "What?" The monitor behind them flickered. Static danced for a moment, then froze on a single image. A woman in her late 50s, sitting in a dimly lit room. Her eyes red, her hands shaking. The caption beneath read, "Exclusive interview. I never stopped looking for her." Rachel's lips trembled. "That's her," she whispered. "That's my..." And before she could finish, the video began to play. The studio audience leaned forward. Dr. Phill folded his hands. Emily's jaw tightened. Rachel's entire life, the story she'd built, the identity she'd defended, was about to shatter in real time. Because sometimes the truth doesn't whisper. It explodes. The studio fell into complete silence as the monitor behind Dr. Phill flickered back to life. Static, then darkness. Then, a woman's face appeared. Pale, wrinkled, eyes swollen from crying. She sat in a dimly lit room with a single lamp glowing beside her, her fingers trembling against the edge of the chair. "My name is Linda," she began softly, "and I believe Rachel is my daughter." The audience gasped. Rachel froze, her hands clasped tightly together. She could hear her heartbeat pounding louder than the audio. Linda continued, voice breaking. 29 years ago, my baby girl was taken from me. They told me she died. I never believed it. I searched for her for years. I wrote letters to the adoption agency, to hospitals, anyone who'd listen. But every door shut in my face. Dr. Phill didn't interrupt. He just watched, his jaw tight, eyes locked on Rachel. Linda wiped a tear from her cheek. A few months ago, I saw a woman online, talking about her childhood, the same house I lived in, the same town, the same age. And then she said something. A lullaby. Her voice cracked. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. That was our song. I used to sing it to her every night before bed. Rachel's lips parted, her breath caught. That's not possible, she whispered. Emily turned toward her, confused. What's she talking about? The footage zoomed in closer to Linda's face. I don't blame Rachel, she said. She doesn't even know what happened. They told her I was an addict, that I abandoned her. But that wasn't true. They made me sign papers while I was in the hospital, papers I didn't understand. I was just a scared mother trying to keep her child. Gasps rippled through the audience. Rachel shook her head violently. No. That's not true, she muttered. My mom would never. Dr. Phill leaned forward gently. Rachel, I know this is a lot to take in, but before we continue, I need you to listen carefully to what comes next. The video shifted again. Linda took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the camera. The people who raised Rachel, they told everyone I was dangerous, that I made up stories about abuse, about corruption in the system. But they weren't stories. They were trying to keep me quiet. I think they made Rachel believe my pain was hers. A cold wave ran through the audience. Rachel's hand covered her mouth. Tears welled up, but she wasn't sure what she was crying for, confusion, anger, or grief. Dr. Phill turned toward her softly. Rachel, do you remember anything from before you were 2 years old? Any place, any voice? Rachel's eyes darted, her mind racing through flickers of memory. A woman's perfume, a chipped blue teacup, the sound of a song humming through a cracked door. You are my sunshine. Her lips trembled. I thought that was my mom. Dr. Phill nodded. It may have been, but it might not be the woman you think. The video continued. Linda leaned closer to the lens, whispering, If you're watching this, Rachel, please know I never stopped loving you. I didn't lie. I didn't leave you. They took you from me. The screen faded to black. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Even the crew stood frozen. The silence was deafening, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. Rachel's tears finally fell. She stared at the empty screen, shaking her head as though she could undo what she'd just heard. This can't be real, she said. It just can't. Emily looked torn between anger and pity. Rachel, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. Dr. Phill exhaled slowly, choosing his words with precision. Rachel, this may not be the whole story, but it's a piece of something much bigger, something hidden for a very long time. Rachel's voice was barely audible. So, my life, my memories, all of it, Dr. Phill nodded gently, may not have been what you were told. Then he glanced toward the stage doors, and for the first time, his voice softened like he was speaking to a child. Rachel, there's someone waiting backstage who wants to meet you. The audience gasped again. Rachel's head snapped toward him. What? No, I can't. Not now. Take your time, Dr. Phill said. We'll bring her out only if you're ready. Rachel's breathing quickened. I don't even know if she's telling the truth. Dr. Phill looked at her with calm compassion. Maybe the only way to find out is to look her in the eye. The stage doors creaked, opened slightly. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Rachel's entire body went still. The world seemed to shrink into that one moment. Every lie, every doubt, every lost piece of her identity converging into a single heartbeat. And then, through the blinding stage lights, a trembling voice whispered, Rachel. The crowd gasped. Rachel turned toward the voice, her eyes wide, her past colliding with her present. Because sometimes the truth doesn't wait for permission. It walks right through the door. The moment the studio doors opened, you could feel every heartbeat in the room. The crowd leaned forward, afraid to even breathe. A figure appeared, slow, hesitant, trembling. The same woman from the footage, but real now, breathing the same air as the daughter she'd lost. Her hands clutched a small, worn photo, edges frayed, colors fading. It was of a baby in a yellow blanket. Rachel. The lights softened. Camera zoomed in. Rachel sat frozen, her lips parted, but no sound came out. Dr. Phill broke the silence. Rachel, he said quietly, this is Linda, the woman who believes she's your biological mother. Rachel's eyes darted between him and the woman. Her mind screamed that this couldn't be real, that it had to be a mistake. But somewhere deep inside, her heart already knew. Linda took a trembling step forward. Hi, sweetheart. The audience's collective breath caught. Even the camera operators stopped moving. Rachel blinked hard. Her throat felt dry. Don't call me that, she whispered. Linda nodded, tears glistening. I know. You don't remember me. You shouldn't. You were so small when they took you. Rachel's chest heaved, confusion flooding every corner of her body. You're saying they stole me? From who? My mom loved me. Linda's voice cracked. She did love you, but she wasn't supposed to have you. A murmur rippled through the audience. Emily covered her mouth, trembling. Dr. Phill leaned forward. Linda, let's slow down. Can you explain what happened? As clearly as you can. Linda took a deep breath. I was 24. I had a baby, Rachel. Her father left. My parents thought I wasn't fit to raise her. There was a custody fight, lawyers' lies. And one day she was gone. They told me she'd been placed in foster care. A few months later, they told me she'd died. Her voice broke completely. I buried an empty casket, Dr. Phill. I buried my baby. The room fell silent again. Rachel's eyes filled. Her voice shook. So, if what you're saying is true, then everything I remember, my whole life, was built on someone else's truth, Dr. Phill said gently. Rachel covered her face with both hands. No, she whispered. No, this can't be happening. Emily reached across, touching her shoulder. Ratch, maybe it's time to stop fighting it. Maybe it's time to listen. Rachel looked up, her mascara streaked, her face trembling between denial and recognition. She stared at the woman before her, at the trembling hands holding that yellowed photograph. I remember that blanket, Rachel whispered. I had dreams about it. I thought I made that up. Linda stepped closer, tears spilling freely now. You didn't make it up. That was yours. I still have it. She held out the faded photo. You loved it so much, you wouldn't sleep without it. Rachel's breath caught. For a moment, the noise, the lights, the cameras, all of it disappeared. It was just two people, one searching for her past, the other trying to give it back. Dr. Phill sat in silence, letting the weight of the moment breathe. Linda whispered, I never meant for you to grow up confused. I never wanted you to hurt. Rachel's voice trembled. But I did hurt, and I made others hurt because of it. She turned to Emily, tears streaming. I didn't lie to hurt you, Em. I just told the only story I thought I had. Emily's lips quivered. I know. I thought you were making it up. But now I see. Maybe you were just trying to understand the pain that was never explained. Rachel nodded, breaking down completely. I just wanted someone to believe me. Emily reached for her hand. Now I do. For a long moment, no one spoke. The camera captured something rare. Not spectacle, not confrontation, but raw, human healing. Dr. Phill leaned in softly. Sometimes, he said, the truth doesn't destroy us. It rebuilds us, piece by piece. Rachel turned to Linda, her voice small. Ganiyukio. Linda nodded silently. They met in the center of the stage, not perfectly, not gracefully, but honestly. Rachel trembled as Linda wrapped her arms around her. Two broken timelines finally meeting in the middle. The audience rose to their feet. Some cried. Others just held their breath. When they pulled apart, Rachel wiped her face and laughed weakly through her tears. I guess I wasn't lying after all, she said. I just didn't know whose story I was telling. Dr. Phill smiled gently. And now you do. The camera zoomed out as the music swelled softly. The screen faded to black with Rachel holding the photo. The one of her, as a baby, pressed to her heart. For the first time, her story was no longer about pain. It was about truth, found in the most unexpected place, forgiveness. Because sometimes the truth doesn't hurt. It heals. The lights on stage dimmed to a warm amber glow. The crowd was still standing. No applause, no noise, just quiet reverence. Rachel sat with Linda and Emily on either side of her, three women bound not by blood alone, but by the weight of truth finally set free. Dr. Phil's voice came in low, steady, almost a whisper, the kind that makes everyone lean closer. You know, he said, looking directly into the camera, sometimes we spend our whole lives running from the truth. We build stories to survive. We tell ourselves what we need to make sense of the pain. He glanced toward Rachel. But the truth, it doesn't have to be the enemy. Sometimes it's the very thing that heals us, the thing that lets us start over. The camera cut to Rachel. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was tired but peaceful. You could almost see her exhale the years of confusion she'd been carrying. Dr. Phill continued, voice soft and reflective. If you're sitting at home and you're hiding something, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's pain, maybe it's a story you've told yourself to feel safe, just remember, healing doesn't start with pretending. It starts when we stop being afraid of what's real. A pause. Then, almost like he's speaking to one specific person watching. Sometimes we don't need a new truth. We just need the courage to face the old one. The final shot lingered on Rachel, Emily, and Linda sitting together, awkward, quiet, but still together. A single caption faded onto the screen. Truth isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the beginning. And then, as the music swelled softly in the background, the narrator's voice closed with calm compassion. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need a little reminder that no matter how painful the truth is, it's never too late to start healing. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what it means to be human and to forgive.